Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
On January 1st, 1976, the Liberty Bell was moved in Philadelphia as part of the bicentennial celebration for our great nation. Philadelphia is one of the most iconic cities in America, and the Eagles fans are considered some of the toughest and rowdiest group of the bunch. One of those fans back in this same year was a season ticket holder for 10 years, and he was about to meet a man that would change his life and inspire a city, and it all revolved around a coach named Vermeil.
Welcome to the Football History Dude podcast, where each episode is a journey back in time to learn about the rich history of the NFL. Your host is Arnie Chapman. Football is his passion, and he wants you to come along with him to explore the yesteryear of the gridiron. So hop on board his DeLorean and let's get this baby up to 88 miles per hour.
This time as we step off the DeLorean, the date is September 12th, 1976, and we are in Irving, Texas. We're at Texas Stadium because we're here to watch the Philadelphia Eagles and their season opener against the defending Super Bowl champs, the Dallas Cowboys. Well, why are we here? I mean, last year the Eagles were horrible. Now we have new hope. That new hope comes in the form of Coach Dick Vermeil, and the city would latch on to the hope of one of their own. A 30-year-old bartender and a school teacher that tried out for his hometown team. He would end up making it on his hometown team, the Philadelphia Eagles. They would end up making a movie about him later on, 30 years later. That man's name, Vince Papale. He stepped out onto the field for his first ever regular season game on September 12, 1976 in Irving, Texas, at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. Now, many know this story. The reason why many know this story is because it was made into a movie, a Disney movie called Invincible with Mark Wahlberg. He was playing the character of Vince Papale, and Greg Kinnear would play Dick Vermeil. I'll go ahead and leave links in the show notes to the movie and Vince's website so you could dig into it yourself even more into this incredible true story, which, by the way, you can get to the show notes of your podcast player of choice or by heading to thefootballhistorydude.com. Again, that's thefootballhistorydude.com. It's the best place to go to get even more information about the topics and guests that I bring on the show. Also, if you'd like to get more involved and maybe even help the show out, you can support the show in various ways. You can review the show, subscribe, offer a donation, or even get some merchandise. Again, that's over at the website, thefootballhistorydude.com. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into this real-life, incredible story of Mr. Invincible Vince Papale. Hey Vince, welcome to the Football History Dude podcast.
Oh, it's great to be here, Arnie. Thanks very much. Yes, beautiful down where I'm at right now. I escaped to Jupiter, Florida.
Nice, yeah. And speaking of being beautiful, the story that you have is a beautiful story that many of us have been able to be inspired by. And myself, I've just rewatched the movie again because it's something that I saw when I was younger, just coming out of high school. I graduated 2003 and the movie came out 2006. I understand that was the 30-year anniversary of Invincible. I guess the first question I want to ask is, what was Philadelphia like as far as a sports fan, football fan back in 1976 before this whole thing happened?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate that very much, Arnie, and your compliments. And, Invincible's sort of been, it's still that dream come true kind of a thing, pinch me. And my family and I last night, we actually watched the remake of Beauty and the Beast and to see how beautifully that was done. And then I looked back and actually played the trailer to the movie and saw how beautifully that was done. that I'm a Disney character sort of blows my mind, and that's pretty crazy. So, 76, Philadelphia. Frank Rizzo was the mayor. It was, the country was going through a recession. The Vietnam War was just about wrapping up. There was with the Philadelphia sports teams, we were not on the top of anything. Just almost all the major teams. We had the Flyers back then. We had the Sixers, the Phillies, and of course the Philadelphia Eagles. And we didn't have any of the other, we didn't have lacrosse, we didn't have the indoor soccer or any of those indoor leagues and indoor lacrosse that came up later on. But, the four bigs, and nothing was happening there, and as they say, and what somebody wrote in, what they wrote in the bio is that, the city was looking for somebody that they could hang on to. They were looking for a hero. And, they turned to Rocky, was their guy, he was a fictional guy, rags to riches. All he was looking for was a shot at the big time. And the movie, came out right around the same time, came out right after I was playing, but, all of a sudden, once people sort of latched on to my story, our story, I always say, because it's every person's dream come true. Then they started looking to me, and I started being referred to as real life Rocky, and it just catapulted from there all over the country, which was pretty crazy and pretty wild. But there was a time of despair, and people were looking for a hope, just like we're looking for hope right now, and looking for that silver lining, and I was the silver lining, at least for Philadelphia at that time. And then, when you know it, 4 or 5 years later, almost all of our teams are in the championships or are working their way to the playoffs, and the Eagles, of course, getting into the Super Bowl, the Phillies into the World Series, the Sixers coming along, and the Flyers coming off a couple of Stanley Cup wins. So it was good. It was good.
And you mentioned that the comparisons to Rocky and how the nation kind of latched onto you. In the movie, were the clips that they kept going back to where they talked about, and Papale is still on the team, and was that real live clips from back then, or was that made for the movie?
Well, they made them from the movie, but a lot of the clips, if you take a look at the clips that they show on the TV, were really plays that I had made. Understanding that the guys that did our movie, it was obviously a Disney production. Executive producer Ken Mock, who took the risk, and Brad Gann was the writer. Matter of fact, I've been texting with him the last couple of days, and we've been going back and forth because something really cool happened in our life. Our son Vinny he's signing somewhere, and I can't say where at this point until they do a release. But our son Vinny's going to get a shot to play pro football. And I was letting these guys know because they were such an important part of it. But with the kind of pedigree that it had, and Mark Sciardi and Gordon Gray, who did our movie, are the same guys that did Miracle, Rookie, the new guy, Secretariat, Game Plan. But the Miracle and Rookie, they were based on true characters. They were based on life. And a lot of the stuff that they drew from that was really what happened. And if you took a look at the movie Miracle, which is without a doubt one of my top 5 sports movies ever. And when you see that, you could pretty much run what they did on the cinema screen side by side with what was really happening back there in 1980, and when we were winning the gold medal in the Olympics, and it was basically the same. So, a lot of those flashbacks that they did there were really plays that I had made. And when you're watching the movie, when you see what went on in training camp, when you saw what was going on in the rough touch, what you saw was going on, anytime there was a pro uniform on, it was pretty much exactly the way it was back in the day. And, even to the point where we're using headlights from cars sometimes in the field because, the lights on this little 80-yard field that we played on in the back of, in the movie they had it the Tankard Bar, but in real life it's called the T-Bar in suburban Philadelphia. And it was the outfield for a softball field, and that's where we played. And occasionally the lights would go out and they'd bring the cars out, so it was pretty cool. But they were the flashbacks, and it was there, and they had to get the NFL's permission to do that. And it was very important for us to get, the endorsement of the NFL to be able to use their branding. So a lot of stuff behind the scenes here, Arnie, when the movie was being made, which to me is, I'm going to someday write that book. We're coming up on the 15th anniversary, and when it comes up, I'm going to write that book on the making of Invincible. So it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine you've going through two different, the crowned achievements of being a fan and then getting in to be able to play for your hometown team, and then also then having a movie made about it 30 years.
Yeah, that was pretty sick. That was, I mean, as my kids would say, yo, Dad, that's totally dope. I mean, it was really, it was insane and sick. And, you know, to come out of that tunnel that first time, not to cut you off, but to come out of that tunnel for the first time in a regular season game against the New York Giants, and everybody was fully throated. And to come through that tunnel, and they introduced the offense, and then they said the remainder of the Philadelphia Eagles. And man, I tore, my feet didn't even touch the ground, Arnie. I just tore through the cheerleaders that were creating the gauntlet to come through, and just sprinted to the other side of the field. And they you know, the scene in the movie where they have me pointing up, one of that is when I was pointing up to my dad and my buddies that I had season tickets with. So it was pretty wild.
Yeah, not to get all emotional, I'm actually getting a little bit of tears in my eyes, and you know how they get the hair on the back of your neck right now just from kind of reliving your story through that. And I can't imagine, again, moving from that experience of first time running through the tunnel, then 30 years down the road, that experience of sitting down in Hollywood or wherever they would have had the movie release and just saying, wow, they made a movie about me. I know you were super involved in it, but like, what was that experience that first time for that first screening for you?
Well, the first screening was very interesting, but I'll take it back to the first time I went to the first set. As you know, or you maybe not know, but when a movie is being filmed, they film it out of sequence. So the first shots that they shot were the ones between Coach Ramil and his wife Carol and the two kids. And they were shot at a studio somewhere in Philadelphia. And then that's an interesting story that I could tell you too about how the movie went from being shot in Philadelphia to being shot in New York City. But so the first time I walked onto the set actually was when we were doing the pro scenes, and it was against the Cincinnati Bengals. And when I walked in there and I saw I saw the makeup trucks. And about 50 yards away, and we were outside the stadium at the University of Pennsylvania called Franklin Field, where the Eagles won a world championship back in the day, back in 1960. And that's where we were shooting, and they converted that into Veterans Stadium. So as I see the makeup truck and I see Greg Kinnear coming out of the makeup truck dressed as Dick Vermeil, I swore it was Dick Vermeil. Looked just like him. Between the makeup and the hair weave and all that. I mean, he had to put a hair weave in poor Greg, and he was itching all the time. But he played it to the hilt. I'd have swore. And then when I walked in the tunnel and onto the field, I wasn't ready for what I saw, with production cameras all over the place, people in the stands, 5,000 extras. Mark Wahlberg, seeing Mark, and he and I had already connected, and we were working out together 2 weeks prior to the movie, and with a guy by the name of Jennings from the Miami Dolphins. And we were working on Mark and perfecting his skills, and I was showing him some of the tricks of my trade. But to walk on that football field and to see that, and to see the actors and all the extras, and to see all the equipment, it just blew me away. And then, you go through the production, which is really cool, where every set that we went to, they would have our director's chairs with our names on them, and there would be video monitors, and be about an 8x8 tent, and there'd be Gatorade in there for us, and the script for the day. So you're going through that, and then they're going to show you the first screening, and I get the first screening, and they're going to do it in New York City, and it's at the Disney headquarters in New York City, right down the street in Park Avenue from the NFL. So you have all the NFL execs, you have all the stars in the movie, with Mark behind me, with my son and daughter, Gabrielle and Vinny. And you just saw Gabrielle on the outside. Gabby now, she's 26, but when the movie was being shot, she was 10 and 10 years old. And Vinny was 6, 7 at that particular time. So they're sitting behind me. And when I saw the movie for the first time come on, and the first thing, like last night when I was watching Beauty and the Beast, Ronnie, they show the castle, and the Disney, and then the fireworks going. And when that came on, I got the chills like you can't even possibly imagine. And then when Jim Croce is singing "I Got a Name," and that was the opening scene. And then they did a montage of what it was like in Philadelphia back in '76, and they recreated that. It just brought me to my knees. And then, so then I'm going through the movie and I'm watching and I'm saying, whoa, look at how they did that scene. Look at this, look at that. You know, I'm a TV radio guy in the past, and I'm really into production. And I was more than anything, rather than the story, I was into how they produced and how they did those scenes, because I was there for almost every shot that was taken, for every inch of film that they had. And then finally at the end, when they did the credits, and then they put that black and white where it's me and I see me up there, I just broke down. And right behind me, Mark breaks down. My kids are crying, and they flipped the lights on and they started laughing. We got you, Papale, we got you. We knew we'd get you on that one. And that's when I realized, Arnie, that this is my story. This is our story. And then from there, they sweetened it up, put some more music in, and, put a couple of effects in. But it was pretty cool to see that raw one, and I saw it up in New York with my buddy Mark, who I stay in touch with all the time, by the way.
Yeah, I saw an interview where you were interviewing him on set, and it seemed like you guys had pretty good camaraderie there, and you seemed like you really did have that back and forth. Did you guys have any back and forth when the Eagles ended up beating the Patriots a couple years ago?
Oh, yeah, we had a good time with that. Mark, well, first of all, as I said, Mark and I had trained together at a local high school, Northeast High School, where ironically my wife went to, who was not a Giants fan, was world-class gymnast, by the way. And so we trained there, and then he actually came to our house on a couple of occasions. When he stayed in Philadelphia, he stays in a really cool area called Rittenhouse Square at the Rittenhouse. And there's a great bunch of restaurants and bars. And every night we were fraternizing and just getting to know each other in that respect. And then, so when it came time when we were going to shoot the movie, he basically said that he felt a lot of pressure that I was going to be on the set all the time. And the whole thing, between Mark and I, it was a matter of respect and a matter of trust. I trusted him that he was going to play it to the hilt, and he respected me. I respected him, and I guess it did okay because, as I said, here we are. They shot the movie in 2005, and here we are 15 years later. We're still very close, to the point now we're at the Super Bowl, and I have my family out there. Gabriella and Vinny, and we're there, and we're all eagled up. I'm not wearing my jersey, but we're all eagled up, and it's very difficult for me to go anywhere where there's an Eagles football game and there's fans. But I can tell you that I didn't buy one beer when I was in the stadium
right.
at the Super Bowl. But yeah, they were every time a vendor would go by, there'd be one sitting right there in front of me. And so I was busting Mark's chops. He's got Wahlburgers, and there's an Invincible burger. So we're in the Mall of America. We're going to take the train from the Mall of America into the stadium in Minnesota, and we're walking around the mall just chilling before we were taking off. And there's a Wahlburger, so I take a picture of it, and with us all rigging up with the Wahlburgers in the background, and I send it to him, and I said, "Let me tell you something, dude. If you're here in a Patriots uniform, I'm going to come and get you and rip it off your back, right?" And just kidding around, he knows. Wouldn't you know it, and 2 minutes later, I get a FaceTime from him. And here, he was in Bogota, Colombia, filming Mile 22. And laughing his butt off. And then he said, "Come on, everybody, come on over here. I got Pally." He called me Pally. He said, "I got Pally on the phone." So next thing you know, all the actors and whatever that scene they were creating there, they all came over, and we had the biggest laugh in the world. So, Mark, he's a Patriots fan, and I understand that. But when the Eagles are playing, he'll root for the Eagles. But hey, that's all good, and we have our fun with it. Somebody actually came out with a jersey that on the front it had 83, and on the back 83 Papale, and on the back it had number 12 Brady, which I thought was pretty bad. But and I thought that's the one. He might be wearing there. But no, he was he was in Bogota, Colombia. And it wouldn't surprise me at any one time for Mark. I look down, I'll see FaceTime, and there's Mark. "Hey, what are you doing, pal? I'm just thinking of you, doing this." And he's an animal, man. He's just in such great shape, and he's a family man. I just love him to death. He's like a brother to me, little brother.
Yeah, that whole story with him and you and your story, everything is just kind of nuts, and that kind of leads me into the next. What was the "Who's Nuts" on the T-shirt? What does that represent?
It's a great T-shirt, man. You can Google it up, put it on your website. It's there. what we had a great special teams coach. His name was Kenny Iman. Kenny, when he came as a rookie coach. He was the center for the St. Louis Cardinals at back in the day for 15, 16 years. I think he wound up with the Rams. So, here's a guy as a center long snapper, and he's been hit in the head a few times, and he was just hilarious, the stuff that came out. So he created this thing called Who's Nuts, WHO'S, NUTS, and in the middle was the Eagles logo with the flying bird, not with the fierce wing that they have right now, the fierce bird. They have the idea of the flying bird with the football in its talons. So he gave me these Who's Nuts t-shirts, and here's what it was all about, Arnie. Back in the day, they used to give out bounties for guys if they made big hits on players, especially quarterbacks. A guy might get a cash bonus. He might wind up with a refrigerator. I mean, it's true. This really was happening back in the 60s and the early 70s. So, but then they found out about it. The NFL found out about it, Pete Rozelle, and they obviously and wisely they outlawed bounties. But what we came up with was the Who's Nuts. And the Who's Nuts, in essence, was a bounty shirt for anybody on special teams that made a big hit, and it was our game ball. And the Who's Nuts game ball, basically, a Who's Nuts t-shirt. So you can only get the shirt if you won a game, and you had to make a big hit, like force a fumble that was recovered, or just force a fumble, or make a game-saving tackle, those kinds of things. I think in my career, I got about 7 or 8 of them. So, and then here's a really cool one. I just found it the other day. I was walking around with it, and it's a great t-shirt. It says Who's Nuts International. And my son Vinny, who's the football player, he says, Dad, dude, he says, that's a pretty cool t-shirt. I found it. Actually, I got that t-shirt in 1977 when we were playing the St. Louis Cardinals in St. Louis, and this guy jumped over in the stands, because back then in those conversion stadiums, you could literally jump right over the front row and into the field. And he just comes up and he gives me the t-shirt, and it says, "Welcome to the Who's Nuts Club, Who's Nuts International." So, every once in a while I wear it around, especially because when you sweat, it shows real good. I like to sweat show every once in a while. So. But that's the Who's Nuts. And, we have them on our website, Papale.com. You can get them. And I sign them. But it's cool.
No, it's very cool. It struck out in my mind because when I watched I believe it was from 1976 or whenever they had the ESPN classic interview, then it showed you taking your shoulder pads off, and you were pretty proud of that shirt. I had to know where did that come from. So it sounds like it was a brotherhood of tenacity or something like that.
Well, you hit it right on the head. It is that brotherhood, and it's amazing the brotherhood that we have in the NFL, and the guys that are together right now. As long as they now call us a legends community, but we're a fraternity. We don't look at ourselves as legends. I don't know where that came from, but if you ask any one guy, they would never think that. But it's a strong fraternity, and that was the brotherhood, and that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, us as fans, we use that term a lot, and it's maybe the wrong term, but I would say there's an inspiring aspect that many players go through. Yourself, obviously, a big inspiration. And when I was at the Hall of Fame, I was able to hear all these different speeches of these players that have gone to the pinnacle, of course, but just this overcoming and overwhelming obstacle that almost probably every one of those players have had to overcome to get to where they were. It's something that we can translate into business, personal life, anything that it is. And I think that that's one reason why we grasp onto our favorite players and the moments that they share with them.
Well, I appreciate that. And, it's funny because I was that guy. I'm the guy that sat in the stands, and I would grasp onto a certain player. And when I was younger, because I was a little kid and I was tiny and everybody told us I was too small to play football, I latched on to a guy by the name of Tommy McDonald. And he was my idol, my hero. And to me, one of my proudest moments was have the opportunity to meet him. And you know what? The first thing he did is he hugged me and told me how proud he was of me. And let me tell you something, Arnie, that to have him, to have a guy like Pete Retzlaff, who we just lost, we lost Tommy, and have Steve, Chuck Bednarik, our middle linebacker. And it just means so much to me.
Yeah. I wondered about that because it said Tommy McDonald in the movie, and that stuck out with me. So that was one of your childhood or players that you latched onto when you grew up then?
Yeah. Tommy was my guy. And ironically, his son played wide receiver at the University of Delaware, where my son went, and he and I are still very close. But, Tommy was my man, and I read his book. They paid me to catch footballs. I used to emulate his drills where I'd lay on the ground and throw the ball up into the ceiling. And I lived in a housing project house with a ceiling about 8 feet high, and you'd see you'd see our wall in the living room, and it would be pockmarked with my football that I'd be bouncing off the ceiling. So, Tommy was my guy. But we all need heroes in our life. So.
Yeah, I agree. And it keeps us going and various reasons. And speaking of keeping going, if you could go back to the night before that first tryout and you could give yourself some piece of advice after living so many years past that, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I would tell my younger self to just chill, and there's a different meaning for chill these days, but in that day it was just to relax and do whatever you needed to do in order to get yourself ready. But, if anything, what you need to do, I think, is visualize yourself being successful, and visualization was very important for me. I was, when they ran that first 40-yard dash in the tryout, I was watching guys that I thought clocked a pretty decent time, but I wasn't sure what it was, but I just had to get away from it, and I visualized myself being a cheetah, actually. And it was that I think allowed me to run that 4.5 on grass. So I don't even know what it would be in turf. So pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty fast time. I mean, I've never touched anything close to that. And speaking of visualization, one of the greatest athletes of all time, Jim Thorpe, when he was on the boat over to Sweden for the Olympics, that's what they had talked about. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he came up to him and he's like, "What are you doing taking a nap?" And he said, "I'm watching myself win the race," or something along those lines. And that was one of the first recorded ones that I personally was able to, I guess you could see where someone would visualize the outcome.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah. I'll jump in there for a second. My wife Janet was, as I said, not a Giants fan. She was cast that way, so we could get the NFL's branding rights. But in reality, she was a world-class gymnast on the USA team. You talk about Olympics. She was on that team that went to Munich, but was injured, so she didn't compete. But she did compete in the World Games. But she, as a coach, she would have her, and she coached at the University of Penn, she would have her athletes visualize their routine on the ground and just go through everything on the ground, especially the balance beam. And she still does that. And that's what she taught, which was pretty, a very effective way of coaching and teaching people.
Yeah, I agree that visualization is extremely important. And someone that had a vision himself, which at the same time, maybe a lot of people didn't agree, was Coach Dick Vermeil. Can you describe your relationship and what you thought of Coach Vermeil?
Oh my God, yeah, I'm still very close to him. That was a great segue, by the way, in a book I wrote with Danny Franks, number 53, the white knuckle guy, called Last Laugh, Vision of Victory. And you, I know, are at the Hall of Fame, and our picture called The Last Laugh of us yelling it up on the sideline after a big hit. And we got Who's Nuts t-shirts. And Dick Vermeil is at the Hall of Fame, and Dick Vermeil is one of the people that we featured in the book, somebody who going basically from nowhere to what he got to become the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Dick Vermeil gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, Artie. I mean, how many, I never, in the phone call where I don't end the phone call with telling him how much I love him and respect him and thank him for what he's done. He has totally changed my life, and and what I am today, a lot of it because of him. And when I get out and speak, I talk about those people in your life that have made such an important, tremendous impact. And he's certainly one of them, along with my high school football coach and my school teachers. But Coach he was a hard guy in the beginning, really stubborn. It was his way or the highway. But it's me. There was something about me that connected with him. It might have been our Italian American heritage. It might have been the fact that we were both school teachers. that we were both tiny when we were smaller, said it would never happen, never get anywhere. The fact that we were both coaches, the fact that our fathers were both mechanics. And there was something going on there, Arnie, there was that karma that was there. And I know he knew, he said he never saw anybody run as fast as I ran in grass back in that day. He said, I said, what was it that attracted you? He said, the speed. And then he said, when I saw how physically tough you were and wouldn't back away from anybody, he says every day he was basically cheering for me, but he didn't want to do it out loud because he had to deal with his other coaches. And what you saw in the movie was basically the way it was with some of those coaches. But, I had a couple of advocates, and one of them, the biggest one, was Coach Vermeil. And he told me, when the rookies, we just had we had a camp, his first training camp was 8 weeks. And in that first camp, he just brought in a bunch of rookies and free agents. And I was just killing it, knocking these kids around. They're 22, 23 years old. And I'm slamming everything that's moving that has an opposite color jersey on and catching everything that's being thrown at me. And Coach just loved it. But when the veterans got there, I backed off. And he said, he pulled me in. He said, what's going on? You're not the same guy. He said, are you intimidated? I said, no, I'm in awe. He said, you're in awe of these guys? These guys, you're in awe? Look at how they played last year. He said, I'll tell you what. He says, you better get out of this awe stuff. He says, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. I'll give you a couple preseason games, and if you don't show me what you showed last week, you're gone. Okay, Coach, that's it. Well, guess what? I'm here. I survived and I stayed. And I wound up actually leading the team in receptions. He gave me the shot of a lifetime against the Miami Dolphins in our 4th preseason game when Howard Carmichael, our Hall of Famer now, Howard Carmichael, he went down with a bad ankle, and Coach told me, he says, are you ready? I said, Coach, I was born ready, man. And I started that game and just killed it, absolutely killed it, and in every phase of the game for the first half. And the next day, Coach showed a highlight of me up there on the field the night before at the Orange Bowl. And at that point on, I knew I had a teammate. And then it was amazing, Arnie, how much the other guys on the team, offense and defense, started coming up to me, giving me a hand, giving me a pointer, because they knew eventually I was probably going to wind up on a team. So, and I didn't play that poorly in the Cowboys game. It was pretty, that was pretty dramatic, but it was done very well. And, that scene where Mark drives through the city and the little boy comes out and runs out in front of the car and picks up the football. That's my son, Vinny.
Oh, really?
Who is going to sign to play professional football this week. And also, my daughter, Gabriella, who works for the 76ers, she was the quarterback to go on the pigtails to throw the ball under the street. So when I see it, I get very emotional when I see that scene. Gabby has a great arm. She has a gun for an arm. She does the best Tom Brady impersonation you've ever seen. It's perfect. She's better than Brady, I think. It's really cool. It's so funny. So I'm a lucky guy.
Oh yeah, luck is a good way to put it, but I think it comes from that grit, tenacity, passion, and any other kinds of adjectives you want to use. And I just got one of those, again, moments where my whole entire body started getting the chills because of how cool that has to be as a father, as a fan of the Eagles, as a brother, a son, every other thing. It's just so cool to be able to experience everything that you have as an individual. And I hope everything else, that you do in life just comes out with the same results. One question that I do always have for every guest is, I'm giving you the virtual keys to my DeLorean. You can go back in time to any point in history. Considering you're an Eagles fan, I'm guessing you're going to an Eagles point. Let's go before your career. You can be an observer, a fly on the wall, but you can't change the outcome. What moment are you going to?
Oh man, is this prior to me being born at any time in history?
Any time in history. The DeLorean, man, you can get that flux capacitor up to 8.21 gigawatts, and you can go anywhere you want.
Yeah, the old DeLorean. I do remember the DeLorean. Well, let me just. I guess if anything, I'd like to do something and go back in time to when I was living. And I think I would like to go back to in a time where we were together as a family with my mother, who was a great athlete. My father was a great athlete. And we were all anywhere just down on the Jersey Shore, on the beaches, with my cousins. I think that if you pick any one day, in the last 2 weeks in August, right before Labor Day, where I'd be with my sister and my father and my mother, all together as a family. That I would just love to have that one more time, and to watch my grandfather floating in the ocean, just on his back with the waves just crashing around him. that would give me the ultimate joy. That would be the ultimate flashback.
Well, Vince, I think we started off by saying that your story was beautiful, but I think we ended it by saying that your vision and your remembering going back in the DeLorean is beautiful too. So I just want to say thank you again for joining the Football History Dude podcast.
Thanks, Ronnie. You did a great job, and anybody wants to get me out there or do anything, just go to Papale.com. A lot of fun stuff going on there. So I appreciate it, Ronnie.
Now, how about that story? I'll tell you what, if that doesn't bring you to your knees, then you probably don't have a pulse. You're like the Tin Man, you need a heart kind of thing. Or was that the Scarecrow? I don't know. One of those guys that needed to have a heart. But if you remember living it, like, I don't really remember living it. I just remember it from the movie. Or if you even remember watching the movie, I got to imagine that you have your own favorite football moment that you'd like to relive. For me, I guess the closest thing I can come to as far as Vince playing football with his heroes of the game would be when I went and played against some of the Detroit Lions players against a charity basketball game. And also, I would go to their training camp, that kind of thing. Speaking of Detroit Lions, though, one of this week's favorite football moments comes from a Lions fan, but he's across the pond. And then the other story is going to go back to the time in the NFL, right around when Vince Papale was in the middle of his career. Take it away, football dudes.
Hi, Football History Dudes. Love the podcast. It's James from Liverpool in England. I am, like yourself, a huge Detroit Lions fan. Have been for as long as I can remember. Absolutely love them. My football memory would be watching my Lions play over here at Wembley Stadium against the Falcons with the last second winning field goal. It was amazing. It was amazing to see the Lions. It was just unbelievable for me as a big fan. Keep up the good work, mate. Cheers. Bye.
This is Greg from CFL America, and my first football memory is the 1977 game between the Miami Dolphins and the St. Louis Cardinals, in which Bob Greasy threw, I believe, 6 touchdowns, and Conrad Dobler at the end of the game chucked his helmet into the stands. And that, I believe, was the last time that the Cardinals were on Thanksgiving before the 21st century.
And that's 2 more people reliving their favorite football moments of all time. And if you're interested in sharing your favorite football moment on the show, or even maybe stating your case for a person or a player, coach, what have you, that you think needs to be in the Hall of Fame, you can do both of those things by heading over to myfootballmoment.com for the details. But for now, dudes, I'm through if you're through.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football History Dude. To make sure you're the first to get the next episode, please subscribe on your podcast player of choice and head on over to thefootballhistorydude.com for the show notes and more information on the history of the NFL. And remember, dudes, where we're going, we don't need roads.
We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.